You have two ways to determine the type of a variable. For primitive types, you can use the typeof operator, and for reference types or object types, you can use the instanceof operator. So for example, if we have a string variable like this, the type of that variable will give you, the type of that variable, in our case it will be a string. But if you have a non-primitive variable or a reference type like this, then when you check it with typeof, you'll simply get object, which most of the time is not very helpful. So for reference types, we have the instanceof operator that we can use. So here I'm creating a reference type, which is a new bank account. And if I do a my checking account instance of bank account, we'll get true, because this checking account variable has been instantiated using this bank account constructor, which we are going to talk about in more detail later in the lessons. But the gist is, since we created a new bank account, my checking account is a bank account, which we can validate using the instanceof operator. So for primitives, we use typeof, and for object types, we use instanceof. But having two separate operators just to do a type checking can be a little less convenient at times, if you will. But luckily, we can work around this. And for that, we are going to create this primitive string class like this. And if we check quote instance of primitive string, we'll again get false, because there is no meta information in the primitive string class to remind itself that it is a primitive string type. And those kinds of meta information can be declared using symbols. So we are going to define a static method on that class that has the name symbol has instance. And then inside that static function, we are going to do a typeof check. And guess what? It will make this primitive string pass the instanceof test as if the quote primitive string here is indeed a reference type named primitive string. So when we execute the code again, we get true. And again, this is a slightly advanced example that we are going to cover in detail later, but I just wanted to interject it here to show you the possibility of it. So it is totally okay if it looks a little weird. Actually, it does look a little weird to me as well, and I assure you it will make much sense when you finish the course and revisit this lesson later. Also, as an additional warning, if you find yourself type checking like this over and over again, it's probably time to sit back and think about using an actual static type system like FlowType or TypeScript, but that again is beyond the scope of this introductory section, and we'll cover static type annotations later in the course. However, it's good to know that with the help of symbols, you can bend the language to your will, if you will. In the next lesson, we'll see a different and arguably less black magic-y way of doing a similar type checking.